The wind howled across the barren plains as snow fell in relentless sheets. Luke Carter, a struggling farmer in his late 40s, trudged toward his barn, his coat pulled tight against the brutal cold. His once thriving family farm was now barely holding on, weighed down by bad harvests and mounting debts. As he neared the fence line, a dark shape in the snow caught his eye. At first, he thought it was debris, but then it moved. His heart clenched. It was a mare, collapsed and shivering, her emaciated body covered in frost and mud. Abandoned. Left to die. Kneeling beside her, Luke felt the deep scars along her flank. She was weak, barely breathing, but something in her dark, tired eyes mirrored his own struggles. He knew what it felt like to be cast aside. "You're not giving up on me," he murmured. "And I'm not giving up on you." With sheer determination, he wrapped his scarf around her neck and urged her up. The mare trembled, struggling against the weight of exhaustion, but Luke refused to let her fall. Step by step, through the biting cold, he led her home. Inside the barn, he laid her on fresh straw, covering her with a warm blanket. She barely moved, refusing food and water, but he stayed by her side. The storm raged outside, but for the first time in a long while, Luke felt something stir in his chest. Hope. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving a quiet stillness over the farm. Sunlight peeked through the gray clouds, casting a soft glow inside the barn. Luke stood by the mare's stall, watching her closely. She hadn't moved much, but her chestnut coat now glistened faintly in the light. And for the first time, he dared to believe, maybe, just maybe, they could save each other. Sunlight streamed through the barn window, casting a soft glow on Grace. Though weak, she was breathing steadily, a small but hopeful sign. "You've got fight in you, girl," Luke murmured, determined to nurse her back to health. The first few days were rough. She refused food and water, her spirit as broken as her body. But Luke was patient, sitting with her for hours, speaking softly, telling stories of his farm and his late father's wisdom about resilience. By the end of the week, Grace showed signs of recovery. She lifted her head, her dark eyes no longer lifeless. With Luke's encouragement, she took her first shaky steps. As the days passed, her coat regained its shine, her body grew stronger, and the once abandoned mare became a symbol of quiet strength. One morning, as Luke brushed her, he smiled. "Can't keep calling you girl, can I?" He studied her eyes, filled with newfound determination. "Grace. That's what I'll call you." The mare nickered softly, as if approving. Spring arrived, melting the snow and bringing fresh life to the farm. Luke led Grace outside, her hooves pressing cautiously into the thawing earth. She lifted her head, taking in the open world she had almost lost. Watching her, Luke felt something unfamiliar, a sense of purpose. But something was different. Grace's appetite had grown, and her belly swelled. Concerned, Luke called Dr. Harris, the local vet. After an examination, the vet confirmed it. Grace was pregnant. Stunned, Luke stared at her. His farm was barely surviving, and raising a foal would be a challenge. But as he watched Grace, he knew this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was a second chance. Weeks passed in preparation. Luke fortified the paddocks, stocked supplies, and read everything he could about foaling. Then, one crisp morning, it happened. Grace went into labor. Luke called Dr. Harris, his heart pounding as he stayed by her side. After a tense delivery, a small, chestnut foal entered the world. Luke exhaled in relief as the newborn nickered softly, nudging against him. "Blaze," he whispered, the name coming naturally. As Blaze grew, the farm came alive again. His wobbly legs turned into strong, confident strides. Luke marveled at his natural agility, a quiet hope building inside him. But raising a foal wasn't easy, especially one as spirited as Blaze. One windy afternoon, the mischievous colt wriggled free from his halter, galloping wildly around the paddock. Luke groaned, shaking his head. "You've got spirit, kid," he muttered before taking off after him, knowing full well this was only the beginning of their journey together. Luke took a deep breath, steadying himself as he tightened Blaze's reins. The energy around them crackled with excitement, but whispers from the crowd reached his ears. "That colt doesn't have the breeding for racing. Carter's wasting his time." Luke ignored them, his focus locked on the horse beside him. Blaze shifted impatiently, his muscles tense with anticipation. Luke gave his neck a reassuring pat. "You ready, boy?" Blaze nickered softly, ears flicking forward. The starting bell rang. Blaze surged forward, his hooves pounding the dirt, sending dust flying. The other horses bolted ahead, their strides powerful and practiced. But Luke knew Blaze's strength wasn't just in speed, it was in endurance, in heart. At the halfway mark, they were still trailing, but Luke didn't push. He knew Blaze was just getting started. As the final stretch approached, he gave a slight nudge, and Blaze responded instantly, lengthening his stride, surging past one, then another. The lead horse was just ahead. The crowd's cheers grew deafening. Luke leaned forward, his heart pounding in rhythm with Blaze's hooves. With one final push, Blaze stretched his neck, his muscles rippling with effort as they thundered across the finish line, neck and neck with the front runner. A stunned silence fell before the announcer's voice rang out, "Photo finish." Luke exhaled, his hand resting on Blaze's sweat-dampened coat. The colt had given everything. No matter the result, they had proven something today. Sarah ran up, breathless. "Luke, you just turned a nobody horse into a real contender." Luke looked at Blaze, pride swelling in his chest. "He was never a nobody," he said, rubbing the colt's muzzle. "He just needed a chance." Luke placed a steady hand on Blaze's neck, leaning in to whisper, "This is our chance, kid. Let's show them who you are." As the other competitors lined up, he couldn't help but notice their gleaming horses and polished gear. Their riders, dressed in bright silks, exchanged confident nods. Compared to them, Luke's plain attire and worn tack stood out, but when he looked at Blaze, standing proud and ready, his doubts faded. The starting bell rang, and Blaze surged forward, his powerful strides devouring the track. The crowd gasped at his speed. Luke could feel the rhythm of the colt's movements, the sheer joy of running pulsing through him. As they rounded the final turn, Blaze found another burst of energy, pushing past the favorite horse. When they crossed the finish line, the roar of the crowd was deafening. Luke barely registered it, his focus was on Blaze, panting but triumphant, eyes shining with pride. Sliding off the saddle, Luke wrapped his arms around the colt's neck, his voice thick with emotion. "You did it, boy. You really did it." Blaze's unexpected victory sent shockwaves through the town. The underdog colt, with no pedigree, had defied all expectations. Luke found himself receiving congratulations, though some reactions carried hints of disbelief. "Never thought I'd see a horse like that come out of Carter's farm," one man muttered at the feed store. Luke just smiled. The real reward wasn't proving others wrong, it was seeing Blaze grow. The prize money wasn't much, but it was enough to fix some fencing and buy better feed. More importantly, it opened doors Luke never imagined. Within a week, he received an invitation to a regional competition, a chance to compete against tougher rivals. On race day, the air was crisp with anticipation. The venue was far grander than the small-town track, with towering bleachers and a polished course. The other competitors looked confident, their horses groomed to perfection. Luke, in his simple jacket and worn boots, felt like an outsider. The murmurs confirmed it. "Just another farm boy with a lucky horse," someone whispered. Luke knelt beside Blaze, resting a hand on his sleek neck. "They don't know what you've got, kid," he murmured. "But they're about to find out." The race was tougher, with tight turns and demanding stretches. Blaze started strong, but the experienced riders and their well-trained horses were formidable. At one point, Blaze lost ground on a turn. Luke's heart pounded. "Push through, boy. You've got this." As if understanding, Blaze dug deep, his strides lengthening with renewed energy. The crowd's cheers swelled as he closed the gap. By the final stretch, Blaze was neck and neck with the favorite, a sleek thoroughbred whose rider shot them a panicked glance. "Now, Blaze," Luke urged. With one final burst of speed, the colt surged forward, crossing the finish line first. The crowd erupted, but Luke only had eyes for Blaze. Dismounting, he wrapped his arms around the colt's damp neck, his voice thick with emotion. "You're incredible. Absolutely incredible." This win wasn't just a victory, it was an opportunity. Representatives from bigger events approached Luke, offering sponsorships and partnerships. The chance to train with top-tier professionals was within reach. But with opportunity came challenges. Competing at a higher level required resources, money for travel, better facilities, and expert training. The weight of it all pressed on Luke. One evening, he sat on the porch, coffee in hand, watching Blaze and Grace graze under the fading sun. His thoughts drifted to his father, a man who believed in hard work and staying true to one's roots. "This is bigger than me, Dad," he said softly. "But I think Blaze can handle it. I think we can handle it." The decision was made. Luke would take the leap, but on his own terms, with integrity and quiet determination. Blaze wasn't just a racehorse. He was proof that heart and resilience could defy expectations. The professional racing world was a whirlwind, unlike anything Luke had ever known. Blaze's regional victory had thrust them into the spotlight, drawing invitations to prestigious competitions and sponsorship offers. For a farmer used to the steady rhythm of the land, the glitz and chaos of the racing circuit felt surreal. Standing in the stable of a grand arena, Luke inhaled the familiar scent of hay, mixed with the polished sheen of pristine equipment. He knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. But as Blaze stood beside him, muscles coiled with energy and eyes filled with determination, Luke felt a steady resolve. They had come this far together. And they weren't stopping now. Blaze stood beside Luke, his chestnut coat gleaming under the arena lights, his dark eyes scanning the bustling activity with calm focus. Despite the grandeur surrounding them, Blaze remained composed, his energy coiled and ready for the challenge ahead. "You're taking all this better than I am," Luke muttered, adjusting the colt's bridle. Blaze nickered softly, his ears flicking toward Luke as if in agreement. The first few races were both thrilling and humbling. Blaze's natural talent shone, earning them strong finishes and a few victories. But the competition was fierce, and Luke quickly realized they were up against not only skilled riders and well-bred horses but also the politics and pressures of the racing world. One particularly grueling race saw Blaze start strong only to fall behind in the final stretch, finishing fourth. The disappointment weighed heavily on Luke as murmurs of doubt and quiet judgment from competitors filled the air. That evening, Luke confided in Sarah over the phone. "Maybe I'm in over my head." "Don't you dare start doubting yourself now," she said firmly. "Blaze has proven he belongs here, and so have you. One race doesn't define you." Luke sighed. "It's not just the race. It's everything, the travel, the costs, the pressure. I feel like I'm losing sight of why I started this." "Then remember," Sarah said simply. "It's not about the money or fame. It's about the bond you and Blaze share. Focus on that." Her words resonated with Luke. As he prepared for the next race, a high-stakes event that could cement Blaze's reputation, he shifted his focus. Instead of competing against others, he trained with Blaze, refining their partnership. Each stride and jump became a reminder of their journey from that snow-covered field where he had found grace to the triumphs and setbacks that had shaped them both. Race day arrived with an electric energy in the air. The grandstands were packed, the cheers of spectators filling the arena. Luke sat tall in the saddle, steadying his nerves as he whispered to Blaze, "This is just another field, kid. Just you and me." The bell rang. Blaze surged forward, his strides powerful and precise. The competition was intense, but Luke felt the colt's determination. As they rounded the final turn, Blaze's muscles strained, but he refused to falter. With a final burst of energy, he pulled ahead, crossing the finish line by a nose. The crowd erupted into cheers. Luke slid off the saddle and wrapped his arms around Blaze's neck. "You're amazing," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Absolutely amazing." The victory brought rewards and new challenges. The prize money covered farm expenses, but the demands of the racing world tested Luke's resolve. He turned down offers that felt insincere, refusing to let Blaze become a commodity. Instead, he remained true to what had brought them this far: hard work, trust, and the bond between man and horse. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Luke stood by the paddock, watching Blaze and Grace graze together. The farm, once struggling, now thrived, alive with renewed purpose. "You've changed everything, Blaze," Luke said softly. "Not just for me, but for this place, for Grace, for everyone who ever doubted what's possible." Blaze lifted his head, his dark eyes meeting Luke's with an unspoken understanding. In that moment, Luke knew that every challenge, every setback, had been worth it. The morning of the Grand Prairie Classic dawned crisp and clear. Luke stood at the edge of the track, surveying the prestigious arena. This was the race every rider dreamed of, the title that marked a horse as a true champion. Blaze stood beside him, his chestnut coat shining, his muscles rippling beneath his skin. He looked every bit the champion Luke had always believed him to be. "You ready for this, kid?" Luke asked, resting a hand on Blaze's neck. Blaze nickered, his confidence matching Luke's own. Together, they had come farther than Luke ever imagined. This wasn't just about the race, it was about everything they had overcome to be here. The competition was the toughest they had faced. As Luke led Blaze to the starting gate, he felt the weight of skeptical glances from competitors. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena, listing the riders. Blaze's name received polite applause, but the crowd roared for Thunderstrike, a towering black stallion favored to win. Luke glanced at Thunderstrike and his polished rider, then back at Blaze. "It's not about them," he murmured, adjusting the reins. "It's about us. Let's do this." The starting bell rang, and the gates flew open. Blaze exploded forward, his powerful strides eating up the track. The crowd erupted into cheers as the horses thundered around the first turn, hooves pounding the dirt in rhythm. Blaze's agility allowed them to gain ground, moving into the lead group by the halfway point. But Thunderstrike was right behind them. The stallion's size and strength gave him an advantage on the straights. As they entered the final turn, he pulled alongside Blaze, their strides perfectly matched. "Come on, Blaze," Luke urged, leaning forward. "You've got this." The final stretch was a blur of motion and noise. The crowd's cheers mixed with the pounding of hooves. Blaze and Thunderstrike raced neck and neck, muscles straining, neither willing to give in. Then, with a final burst of speed, Blaze surged ahead, his strides longer, faster, more determined than ever. They crossed the finish line, just a heartbeat ahead. The crowd erupted. The photo finish confirmed Blaze as the champion. Luke slid off the saddle, wrapped his arms around Blaze's neck, and whispered, "You did it. You really did it." The announcer's voice echoed through the arena, declaring Blaze the Grand Prairie Classic champion. Luke stood beside Blaze, accepting the winner's ribbon and trophy, the words "Grand Prairie Classic Champion" emblazoned across it. That evening, back at the farm, the celebration was quiet but meaningful. Luke leaned against the fence, watching Blaze and Grace beneath the moonlight. "You've changed everything, kid," he said softly. "For me, for this place, for everyone." Blaze lifted his head, meeting Luke's gaze with understanding. Luke smiled. The championship had been the culmination of their journey, but it wasn't the end. More races, more challenges, and more triumphs lay ahead. For now, they stood beneath the stars, their story forever etched in the hearts of those who had witnessed it.